Welcome, everybody. Sorry for the little bit of delay. And that was because LinkedIn was giving me grief. Grief. I hate it.
Grief.
Anyways, well, let's start with our 30-second countdown. Here we go. All right, welcome everybody, and we are going to get started with Bacon and Live. Listen to me, Bacon and Coffee with Mike Verret today. But before we do, we need our caffeine and bovine intro. Here we go. All right, welcome everybody, and we've got Mr. Mike Verret in the house. How you doing today, brother?
Brian, I couldn't be better if there were two of me, man. I got to tell you, that opening is worth the price of admission.
I think so too. It wakes you up. I mean, basically, I wish I could inject caffeine into everybody because it is a Saturday morning. It's like last thing that people want to do is spend time talking about business. Hence why we have replays. But, if you're going to show up live, let's inject them with some digital caffeine, right?
I like it.
Thank you, sir. So today we're going to be talking about brand authority versus other kind of authority. I'm having a brain cramp. But it's your gig.
Your brand versus audience.
Thank you.
Versus your audience.
Got it. Okay. So let's first and foremost, if somebody has never met you before, let's talk about yourself. What the heck do you do? And let me turn off that LinkedIn Live overview so we can see you. Go for it.
Brian, I figured out over 20 whatever years of experience in marketing, advertising, a lot on the agency side, 7 years working for a big Fortune 500 company. I looked back and figured out that the one commonality throughout my career is understanding an audience and how to connect a message to the audience on their terms so they'd hold on to it and they'd remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do now is quite literally show businesses how to talk about themselves to their audience, with the simple understanding that 100% of what's important to you as the business, only 3 to 5% of that matters to your audience. And trying to find that connection point with them becomes like trying to find a needle in a haystack, so to speak. So I help businesses by showing them their audience's perspective of what they're doing to reach them, and show them how to clarify it and bring them through in an order from that point of connection all the way to a call to action, with the philosophy of an audience only remembers one of three things. You got to be first, best, or different. Those are the three things that stand out. So I show businesses how to come across as different to their audience on their terms.
Excellent. So here is something that I kind of put together based on conversations I've had with you and Mark S.A. Smith. And it has to do with, and actually these things are flip-flops. I can move them around because really marketing should be over here and that should be over here. And let's change this to awareness instead of authority. So AWARENESS. There's Captain Typo doing his thing. Okay, so cool. So anyways, so this is kind of the concept that we're talking about. And I wanted to talk about brand awareness versus audience awareness and authenticity and things of that nature. So let's kind of jump into, when we're talking about awareness, what is it that we're trying to get across? I mean, what's the difference between trying to get a brand and an audience to pay attention to you and what's going on?
Well, let's establish the starting point for it. Let's say you are a business leader and you have a vision for the business you're building, the brand that you are building that you want to share with the world. So it starts with a vision of something that you can deliver to an audience that you feel is of value. From there, it's about, okay, how do we build that vision for the brand? How do we build that vision? And you may have heard the term brand blueprint or brand plan, where it starts. I like to think of it as a brand pyramid, like this, where at the top is the vision. And from there, it's, okay, who do we want to be? Maybe a brand archetype, or what is our essence, our brand essence? What are our 4 core values? And they start to think they think the whole time in terms of the business itself. So what that forms is an internal communication. An audience is not interested right away in your vision or your 4 pillars of excellence or core values, and they don't connect right to your services the way that you think they're going to if you're only thinking about it internally. That's where the challenge comes in.
They're not. They don't want to know about your features and benefits right off the bat.
If you hit them with that, you're going to look like everybody else in their eyes. So remember, the way your audience finds stuff is on Google. You type something in Google and you're getting 100 results in under a tenth of a second. The brands don't even know you're looking at their website or the link to their website. And all you have to do is move the mouse back and forth between the back button and the next result. So you have all the control. The brand philosophy would be, let's spend money on SEM and SEO to get to the top of that list, right?
Right.
Now, as an audience member or as a consumer yourself, you probably are prone to skip over the ones that have ad next to it. So that kind of negates SEM, right? Because you feel like you're being advertised to. SEO is about moving up in the ranks. But if the top 3 spenders in SEO, the first 3 results that you click on, if each one says the exact same thing and doesn't resonate with you, then it doesn't matter how high up in the ranking they are.
Right.
The audience is stopping on something that intrigues them and grabs their attention and connects with them, and then they read on. So SEO is what's getting that done.
Let's jump on that one point, though. So a lot of companies use SEM to raise them up in SEO because it does basically the same thing. It's called Google juice. If you're advertising, you're spending money, your rankings go up. So what ends up happening too is they see, the message in the ad and they see the message down below, and there isn't much differentiation between those two, is basically what you're saying. And it's not that you need to write a different ad than what your thing says. It's when you do that, it's, wait a minute, I just saw this same company, up here and they're ranking up there. And it doesn't necessarily give them as much confidence if they see something that's not SEM based, right?
Yeah, but even more based than that, if they were to click on the SEM or SEO results, what they're engaging with is that first 5 to 7 seconds. That's what they're seeing, and they're consuming that as a human being, not as a business at the time. So what they're acting on, what we're really trying to do is, if you think about scrolling through social media like this, you stop your thumb when you hit something that intrigues you. It stops the scroll on your phone. That is how our minds work when we get hit with that initial 5 to 7 second message is, I want to see, I need to know more. I want them to tell me more. They start reading below. So if you apply that to SEM or SEO, 6 results, if the first 5 look identical and sort of, I was searching for this service and that's exactly what they said they are, there's no differentiation. But if the next one they click on aligns with why they are searching for it in the first place, you've come to the right place. Here's what we could do. Let's talk. You've put that audience in the right frame of mind, and you appear different from everybody else.
So, so brand, obviously, the audience awareness, the audience authority, those kind of things. I mean, really what it boils down to is trying to have a conversation with your audience, right? As opposed to trying to get their attention and awareness and things of that nature. I mean, at some point you have to create that awareness in order to get the audience. So what are some of the key tips that you have about trying to do, get them through the journey of, I don't know about this company, but I need the basics, to having that audience awareness that's a little bit more engaged, a little bit more personalized, those kind of things?
Well, the first step is understanding the difference between that brand vision or that brand pyramid and what that audience blueprint looks like. How do you take what you've created internally and communicate it to your audience the right way so that it has that connective thread and brings them through on their terms? So what I use to create that in my mind is I take the idea of an elevator pitch, right? Everybody's heard of that before. But you and I have spoken about this too. It's more like an escalator pitch. Say what you do in 30 seconds. And it's like a conveyor belt approach where either people are going to say, let's say you ask me what I do and I'm in public relations, and I say, I'm a public relations VP. No matter what I say after that, you're going to link Mike to public relations. Your brain has already stored that. So what I say next doesn't really matter to you and it won't resonate.
Right.
So the idea is, or the other option is people say everything they do in 15 seconds. And it usually starts with I help.
Right.
And they try to say what they do for who and what their services are and what the benefits are and everything in one sentence. That's overwhelming. So what I show my clients and how I work with my clients is imagine a conversation on an elevator, the way that somebody would be asking you the questions. If the first thing they ask you is, what do you do? Your objective is to keep the conversation going.
Right.
So if you could connect with them first right there and create that tell me more effect, that's what gets your message going.
Right.
And from there, when they say tell me more, the first thing you're doing is addressing who you're working with and what they go through.
Right.
And then they say, oh, so what do you do for them? And it's a one sentence simple solution the way you would phrase it.
So let's go through and do an example of this so the audience can get it. So ask me what I do.
All right. Let's say we're at a
on the
party.
NLA, right?
Yeah, we're at a bar, whatever. It doesn't matter. So what do you do?
Well, that depends. What do you do? I need to understand who your audience is so I can better tell you.
Oh, interesting. So you're turning the tables with your approach, Brian.
Yeah. So who do you work with?
I'm a plumber.
You're a plumber. So do you do commercial plumbing or do you do consumer plumbing?
Consumer.
So you do consumer plumbing. So your audience is homeowners who need you at the very second when something breaks because they got an issue they got to get fixed, right?
Yep.
So what I do is I help you to get in front of that audience at the exact second they need you.
How?
By creating awareness with them before they have the problem.
And what does that look like?
Well, it looks like things on social media. It looks like email marketing. It looks like engaging, live in networking and things like that. What I do is I help you get your messages in people's purview so that you do it. So let me give you a perfect example. What do people use on a regular basis? Maybe they, you're a plumber. Yeah, their phone, right? Okay, but let's just say toilet paper, right? You're a plumber, okay?
Yep.
So here's one way that you can easily do that. What if you every single month on your customers' doorsteps had your people who are working out in the field drop off a roll of toilet paper with something like this? Okay, so what if you went to them and dropped off the toilet paper with a QR code on there so they could hit that so they could see a personal message from you? Do you think that those people would end up getting that toilet paper, bringing it in, take a picture with their phone?
I don't know.
Yeah, well,
it's weird. I'm a plumber.
Yeah, but think about it. If they did, and it says, you use your phone, scan me with your phone, right? And if they did, and there was a personal message every single month, you're going to get in front of them in a very unique way, because especially if it's a good package of toilet paper, don't give them the crap for their crap. Give them, Northern. Find out what they like. Do they like Northern, Angel Soft, Charmin? What do they like? If you can figure that out and put a valuable thing in front of them once a month, isn't that a lot cheaper than dropping $30 per click on Google?
Sounds it.
Yeah. So anyways, that's my, we've already hit the 50, Hans Gruber is falling off the plaza, Nakatura, whatever it is, plaza right now, because we've gotten all the way to the top.
Well, here's some feedback on it. I love the fact that you turned around, right? It depends. What do you do? That can put people on edge, though, if you're meeting them for the first time, because it almost sounds like, well, what do you do? So smoothing that out.
That's why I said that depends.
You notice. Yeah, that's right. That depends. You let in with that. But that's perfect because you're grabbing my attention. Right. Then you give me an example of what I go through or what I experience, and then you give me a solution.
And at some point, that depends would also be a good plumber joke because it could talk about adult diapers. But anyways, go on.
Turn it right around. Right around. That's good. I like that.
Thank you.
When I asked you, what does that look like? you went to what I would see on a screen. What would help you there is, what does that look like? Meaning working with you like a 3-step process. We identify your needs, we put you through this system, and then we put you out in the world and we test and learn.
Right. Yeah. And I did hesitate on that. And I have to admit, I went to the, the reactive brain response, because that's literally, I'm in digital marketing, which I know everybody wants and needs, and they all get hit up on. So no, that's a really good point. And that's exactly what I did. I jumped into that reactive brain thing rather than thinking through the process. So good point.
And the way to think about that, one way you talk about yourself. So I'll give you what I would say if I had 45 seconds.
Okay, right? Go ahead.
If you were to ask me what I'm just going to pretend I'm answering the question, so you don't have to ask me anything. But I'd say I show you how to talk about yourself. Because the challenge is, your business, you're thinking about 100% of it, all the details, all the services, all the minutia to get it working. But your audience only cares about 3 to 5% of that. Right. And they won't pay attention unless you can make that connection with them. Then bring them all the way through on their terms to the call to action. And that's hard when it's your business. So what I do is come in and offer your audience's perspective of what they're seeing. And I show you how to clarify it, how to create your message in an architecture that aligns with how they need to see it, and then create an audience blueprint so you know exactly how to talk to them all the time. One message builds consistency and gets you to where you want to go. First, best, or different. You want to show up as different. So that's what I do.
Okay, so give me an example of what an audience blueprint looks like. And give me an example of maybe a customer that you actually worked with and what you did.
Sure. So I worked with a business lead, he's effectively a coach or a mentor. That's how he looks at himself and talks about what he does. And effectively what he does is works with leaders who have expertise but don't know everything about what they're getting into or what they're doing. It could be an existing business, a new business. They know what they know and they don't know the rest, but they have to manage the power to get to their vision. So it's about how leaders manage their power. And where we started it was a very sort of amorphous, your power is almost like the Force in Star Wars. It had almost like an ethereal, intangible element to it. And the challenge in explaining what you do to an audience is getting them aligned the same way you think about it. So the first thing that we looked at was, how do we get them aligned to the idea of power in a way that makes physical, realistic sense to them? And we looked at different ways of doing that and how it would flow into what he offers. And where we netted out was this. When he talks about what he does, the first thing he says is he creates power management plans for leaders in this space. And what does that mean? Or tell me more. He starts to talk about the idea of power is something that a leader has and doesn't know how to apply the right way to get to their vision. If they have that problem, they're just going to try to power through. You get to the next level. So what do you do for them? I create a power management system so they can understand how to use their power to get to their vision throughout the entire organization. Well, how do you do that? First, we think of it like a power grid, and we talk to the leader. The leader is the power source, and his power needs to radiate out to management, because that's the next level. They need to be aligned. So imagine those supply lines going to management. And finally, the outlet in the wall is like when you get down to your team and you're empowering them to be proactive towards that vision. What you create is a structure of power distribution and activation that gets you to where you need to be. Okay, so what are the services you offer? Well, I have 3 programs. We start at the top with the power source and defining what that power is. And that's meeting with the leader to lay that out and figure out what that power network looks like. Then we work with the management team on those lines of communication. We call it power lines, to make sure that that power is reaching the next level effectively. And from there, we move into team workshops where we show them how to apply what's coming down as power to flip it back up and make sure that their vision is, or their feedback and their advocacy is included in that vision.
Okay. Totally makes sense. So what I'm trying to do is download something and put it up on the screen, and that's why I'm kind of hesitating for a second. So let me see if I can find this real quick. Bear with me. And let's see, did it download for me? Downloads. This is when you do things live. It's always kind of hard to. Here it is. Okay, so let me do this.
Yep.
And there we go. And so let me share this. So essentially, when you were talking, this is what I saw.
Yep.
It's a colorful power grid, and it's the distribution channel. That's exactly what I saw when you were talking. My mind went to that visual of, the leader is the nuclear energy plant. And then this is leading out to his distribution network, to his management. And as you said, then from there, it gets to either underground or into the wires into the house. And that's essentially what that distribution of power does.
Yep. And that's the point, is if you can align someone, and you were doing this when you were talking about toilet paper, or people call you when something goes wrong and they need it fixed fast, you're able to align them to something that they know, like an idea that they can recognize. Right. And it's based on either just basic understanding of how power moves, and you've seen power lines before, but it starts to resonate with them in a way that they understand. So they're ready to follow you through the rest of your story.
Right.
You get alignment right up top.
Well, and that's kind of one of the key things, is the alignment. So I've used, and the reason I kind of, when you said plumber, I've gone to HVAC companies that I've worked with before, or have talked to, and I gave them the idea of the filter of the month club. Okay. And yes, you want to be able to sell things, right? You could do the filter of the month club where you drop off a new one every single month, and that reminds people. But what if after replacing a furnace for a year, you dropped off a new filter at somebody's door with a QR code or a referral notice, or something that kept you in their purview all the time? What would that do? It would do two things. Number one, it would say, I'm still thinking about you, and you should still think about me. And I know you're not going to buy another furnace right now, but who might? The same people that live in your neighborhood, who all have houses that are all the same age, whose furnaces are probably going to crap out within the next year anyways, because you've just told me that your furnace crapped out because everybody else built their house at the same time. Or, just somebody in your purview that you may talk to. So staying in front of those people, understanding your audience, and basically giving them something of value every single month, raises you up in a lot of different ways. Would you agree? I mean, think about it.
I agree completely. What you just said is 100% accurate from a business perspective. If you think about what the homeowner is getting, peace of mind, I don't have to worry about the filter, and they come and take care of me every month to make sure the filter's fresh. That's the experience they're getting that they're going to remember is different.
Right.
There's
and the
subscription service for furnace filters, and I don't have to worry about it. Great.
Right. Exactly. And how hard is it when you're driving around from job to job to job to just say, you're on your way. This is, you basically got to get somebody to coordinate it, but say, you're going down Butterfield Road, stop in Gingerwoods and drop off a furnace at Brian, a filter at Brian's house, and just put it at his front door. Here it is. We put it in your truck. And when you go, this is part of what you have to do during the day.
And it's a reminder of that one step you have to take once a month to keep your filter fresh. Like that's that's what the audience is seeing. It's exactly. Great value.
Right. And then the other side of it too is I've got 3 filters downstairs. I don't put a reminder on for me to change my filter. I forget about it. It's like until I get done. Right. Unless you're anal enough that you put it in your calendar, change your furnace filter, but this automatically says, hey, I got to change my furnace filter. And it's top of mind awareness. Right. I mean, literally, how much are those things? $2? $5?
I have a box of them behind this wall next to my furnace.
Yeah. And, so is it worth, like I said, and one of the things that most plumbers don't realize, I mean, the two most expensive things that I've ever seen on Google ads, which I've worked with, I don't work much with consumers anymore, but the 2 most expensive things, number one is personal injury attorneys at $150 a click, and plumbers go mano a mano. Remember in the old phone books, plumbers used to outbid each other for a bigger page, right? Mm-hmm. They did the same thing inside of Google, and the average click for a plumber is about $35 in our area. $35 a click. Now, keep in mind, it's going to take 10 clicks to get one action. It's going to take 10 actions to get one sale. So it means that if you're paying $30 a click, you're paying $300 per action, meaning somebody picking up the phone and seeing if you can get there. And it might take 10 of those phone calls to be the right person at the right time to get the job.
And from an audience perspective, the reason those costs are so high is because that's not like, if your power goes out, you don't have the same panic as if water's dripping through your ceiling.
Right.
Plumbing is the worst thing that could go wrong at your house. You need immediacy. You need it now. The first thing they're searching is plumbers. So it's immediacy and quantity. The number of plumbers there are generates that higher number, but it all starts with the audience saying, I'm not waiting. I need somebody now.
Right, exactly. And so the key thing that we're talking about is that authority that you have because you've been in front of those people, in your area, and they're going to be a referral source and a reference for you. And I think that works in all business. I mean, it really is about, it's the way that we're building those relationships, right?
I think you've seen the subscription model, what you're explaining, that every month we'll be there with the new filter model. That's not unlike a lot of products, but what it creates is automatic loyalty because they don't have to do anything. There's no barrier to entry. They don't have to think about it, and it just happens. They're willing to pay for that as consumers because it's less off their mind. It's one thing off of their checklist that they have to do on a Saturday.
But what I'm saying is that, okay, you come in and you sell me a furnace, right?
Yep.
Or you put in a toilet.
Yep.
Every single month for a year, even if you do it for 6 months, you do it for free. You just do it to keep the message, keep yourself in front of them. Exactly. Then after that, you can go back to them and say, hey, you know what? We will continue to get you a furnace a month, and it's going to cost you $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever it is. For $10 a month, we'll drop it off at your house. It'll A, remind you, and B, you don't have to worry about running to the store. And yeah, you can go on Amazon and buy them, but you're going to have a pack of them sitting downstairs and you're going to forget. So do you want to subscribe? So for $120 a year, we'll drop off a furnace filter every single month on time.
That's what I'm saying. It's like concierge service is what subscription service represents to people.
So you could actually
have Amazon Prime aligns with that, where you just put in your order and within a day or whatever, it's all showing up when you need it and you're not paying shipping.
Right. So how does all of this, kind of extrapolate into what we're talking about with the, the audience versus the brand? I think that's kind of the key. How do we take this to the next level?
Well, first, let's understand the bottom floor of that brand pyramid that I keep referencing, where the vision's at the top. The bottom base of that pyramid becomes your products or services. So how you're going about talking about them and selling them is everything above it. Think of it that way. The challenge then becomes, if you were to just take your vision and mission and internal way of thinking about it, you may be leading with your services. You may be leading with something that doesn't matter to your audience yet, because you're saying this is our vision and there's the products that we've made or the services we offer. So on the audience side, the first thing they need is connection to the idea of what you do on their terms. They need to see a solution that they're thinking about when they're looking for the service. Then it's about connecting with them right there on the same space. What are they going through? Why did they even come here in the first place? What are they searching for? So if you can get their attention, get them to say, tell me more, and show them what they're going through, now you've got them aligned with where you want to go. That next step is just that, okay, let's get them physically understanding, like realistically understanding the concept that we've introduced. That's where you'd introduce the idea of what you need as a power management system and a power grid in that example that I just gave you. From there, it's 3-step process of how we work. And now they see the whole thing if they work with you from beginning to end. Then finally, you're going your services, your benefits, and validation. If you write a book, this is where you talk about it, not on the top of the page, because unless you're Stephen King or Danielle Steele, nobody's going to care about your book yet. You need to show them why it's important. So it's that services, benefits, validation, and then call to action. What do you want them to do next? If you create the way you talk about your business in that construct, you're always on their terms because they're human beings and they think in a certain way.
Yeah.
So it's about taking that internal and translating it or interpreting it to that external way of talking about it is how you drive your products and services.
Absolutely makes sense. So with this concept, like we say, most businesses tend to be brand focused, services focused.
Yep.
How would you take what I originally said, and kind of flip that into that pyramid that you were talking? So now put that in sequence so somebody knows, you're a plumber, I'm a digital marketer. And these are the things that you would want to hear about.
So the first thing I would do is stick with the general idea of what you're already doing. It depends.
Mm-hmm.
You could say, well, the way I answer that is based on what you do. I could give you an example based on what you do. Best way to explain what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's what I do. Great, perfect. Now you explain. You get calls right away. People need something fixed right away. You're explaining to them what they go through. And I'm just sort of reiterating what I remember.
Oh, and that's fine.
Yeah, that next step up is I get you noticed. That needs to be inherent to you, right? Because you said it yourself, a lot of people offer this. But let's say bacon figures into how you're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I add the sizzle people need to see when they're looking for your service.
Mm-hmm.
And it ties into bacon. How do you do that? We meet, we figure out exactly who you're going through and what your audience is, or you go through this evaluation. We put together the plan for how you're going to go after them using this system of 150 each. You could explain some of that there.
Yeah.
And then we watch it like a hawk and we tweak as necessary to make sure you're getting to where you need to go. Great. Well, what do the services look like? Now you're up to services and exactly how you work with them, but you're able to talk about it in the context of that process.
Right.
It gives them a great anchor point to understand the whole thing. The benefits to you, A, B, and C. Here's the stuff that I've done. Here's some case studies. Here's my card.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even need to get into toilet paper. You don't need to give them a physical example unless they start asking for it.
Right. Yeah, no, and that totally makes sense. And again, in that 30, 45 seconds, you don't have enough time to go through that entire, that again is where I kind of went off on the tangent. I'm assuming that the guy's going to want to go up and down the elevator 4 or 5 times with me.
Well, the way I explain your once you have that order of information nailed down and how to bring your audience through the story,
mm-hmm.
It's about holding that order of information. And I use the example of a slinky. Where
mm-hmm.
a slinky, you could contract it like this to 45 seconds or a minute, say for a networking call or on an elevator,
Mm-hmm.
or you could stretch it out to a 6-hour workshop, to your website. But like a slinky, the second you change the order, the coils get tangled up and you can't use it anymore.
Right.
That's the importance of the order of information when you take that one way to talk about yourself and apply it to those different mediums to reach that audience.
Okay, so bullet point that out. First thing you do. Yeah.
The first floor of my elevator conversation starts
mm-hmm.
with connection. What do you do? The goal is to get them to say, tell me more. So first floor is connection.
Right.
Second floor becomes who's your audience and what they're going through. So you're aligning the connection to the person, the audience.
Yep.
And from there, third floor is solution. What do you do for them? Simple.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then we'll go through it floor by floor.
Yeah. But the first, and then so it's number one is what do you do? The base floor is
connection. Again, how do you get them to say, tell me more?
Right, exactly. The next thing is empathy with their audience, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. And then the third thing is how do you do it?
A simple way to state what you do, even if it's just one sentence. Like a PR firm may say, I get you out of writer's block because you can't write your own news is on second floor. Businesses can't write their own news. Third floor becomes I get you out of that writer's block to get your news out the right way. Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. So first one is tell me more. Second one is I connect you with your audience. And the third one is how do I do it?
The third one is yes, quick. The fourth one, process, is how I do it.
Okay, so the fourth one is how you do it. And you may never get to that fourth floor. You may just be, it may just stop
but if you could leave an impression and talk about who you work with, like who you help, and get that sentence out about how you help them, you've accomplished a lot of the heavy lifting.
Right, exactly. Okay, no, very practical, very, very practical. And I think that the elevator going up each floor and realizing that by the time you get to, it usually is about 10 seconds. So, you get 10 seconds on the first floor, hook them in. How do you, tell me about you? What do you do? Right, there's the hook. Okay, now I'm talking about myself. I'm hooked. Second floor is your audience. Okay, people, plumber, people need you immediately when they need you because nothing worse than toilet water, rolling down into the basement or the damage it causes. Boom. Okay, so now you've connected them with their audience. And the third thing is,
so what do you do for them? is my
Right.
next question.
Right. So the next thing is, you know, the smell of bacon when you get up in the morning? Basically, I do that, but for your audience, I get them to smell the bacon of you.
There you go.
Mhm.
That's your solution.
Right.
And then how you do it is 1, 2, 3. The
Exactly.
services are listed and added. You have that fourth floor is imperative, I think, because if you're just showing them services they're picking from a menu, if they see the scope of what's going to happen and where the services occur, it looks like a process.
Right. And
that's the goal.
Yeah, and that's the key to a lot of other people is, you know, when you're doing digital marketing, it's like, well, you know, we have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G in order to get it done. So if you can simplify that process into something simple, and the process is you know, for my business, I could tell you my process in simplified terms. The bottom line is I get your salespeople to talk to your current and past and prospect customers. And I do that through digital marketing awareness through their profiles. So they're doing all of the heavy lifting. And the biggest thing is they don't want to do it. So we do it for them. And then you manage the messages that they put out.
So step 1 is activate the sales force.
Right.
Step 2 is give them the repetitive message to give. And step 3 is monitor and activate that funnel as they're bringing them in.
Exactly. But actually, and making the message universal from the company so everybody isn't doing their own thing. You know, that's kind of the key.
That is actually a benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you do this, that's an outcome. That's 6th floor.
Right. Well, yeah, it's true. Yeah. But you know, one of the key things that when you sit down and look at your audience, you know, in my audience tends to be is like they have a sales team, their sales team's out there doing things, but everybody's doing different things at the same time. And there's not this unified message, you know, and that's
right.
And the biggest thing about, you know, using LinkedIn and things like that is most people say, well, I don't use LinkedIn, so why do I want to do anything? And that's the sales team. The sales team is saying, hey, I don't use LinkedIn. I don't get any leads from LinkedIn. Why would I want to possibly do anything on there? And the reason is because your audience is. And, you know, that's where they're playing, if anywhere. They're certainly not on Facebook watching cat videos all day long because 9 times out of 10 companies block it.
Yeah. But Brian, even explaining it that way, what I could see you saying to someone is first we evaluate the business and what you guys are doing. Then the next step is we create that strategy, you know, like we evaluate, we activate, and we're constantly monitoring, you know, like that's sort of like a 3-step process. So I'm sorry, it's activate your sales team, educate your sales team, activate them in the right way, and evaluate progress.
Right. Yeah. When you say
1, 2, and 3.
When you say educate your sales team, that's usually when their eyes glaze over and roll in the back of their head because everybody's
use a different word than educate.
Yeah. Because that's
align.
Right. Yeah. Because everybody is like, I've sent my people to all these webinars and seminars and all these, you know, courses, and I brought in consultants, and these guys come in and everybody, you know, walks out of the team. Yeah. Rah, rah, rah. And then by the time they're done with it a week later, it's like, what did he say?
They're doing the same damn thing. So I'm throwing out words to add like
no,
2, and 3, but alignment, activation, and evaluation.
No, I love it. Yeah.
That's like a way to say from the beginning of when you start working with someone to what it's going to look like at the end, they get their head around it. And then you can go into what does align look like?
Right.
What does activate look like? And what does evaluate look like?
Right. And I think core to all of this stuff is that you need to understand what is important to the person that you're talking to.
Yep.
You know, it could be that they don't want more customers, they want the right customers, you know, and that's what you've got to align what you're saying to the person when you do it, you know, because you make an assumption that just because they're a plumber, they want more plumbing jobs. No, they don't want more plumbing jobs. What they want is less cheap jobs. They want more, you know, I want to sell in higher end homes because they're going to install, you know, when the toilet breaks, they're going to install a $1,000 toilet versus a $200 toilet from, you know, they're going to try to bring me over to install the thing they bought at Lowe's, you know, which won't fit.
And all of us are predisposed to think in terms of need state. What is the problem I'm solving for the customer? Right. Need state, if you picture it on an X and Y axis with no context, is a dot hanging in space, right? Our tendency as a business is to figure out the line leaving that need state, going away from it. What I focus on is the line leading into the need state. Let me guess, this is how you got here.
Define that. We can help. So talk that through, because that's a really great concept.
Let's say you just, let's use the idea of hiring. I'm growing, I need more employees.
Mm-hmm.
When do they start thinking about that? Is it, oh my goodness, I don't have any more employees? I mean, I need more employees, and on a Wednesday I just realized this? Or is it, I'm growing and I'm starting to see that the time schedule is getting off base and I don't have enough gap. I have too many gaps. They're starting to see that before it becomes what we would consider their need state. They can't turn back. You're
Right.
reminding them of how they got to that point, not what you're going to do for them leaving it. You have to tell both, but if you start at that point of connection with that simple idea of, I know what you're going through
Right.
and how you
Well,
got here, you're resonating with them.
and that's the empathy side of things. So basically what you're saying is like, I understand your problem. In other words, there was a point where you all of a sudden started to notice that your on-time delivery went down, or your accounts receivable wasn't being processed fast enough, and then you realize that your business is growing so fast, you need to get another AR person, you need to get another service person to deal with these things. And that's been because the business has grown a little bit. So through that, you've noticed that. And that's why you're driving them to that point, not how you're going to solve it to find them the more people, right? Is what you're saying?
Right. I mean, ultimately, it's thinking about the reason of why they typed what you need into Google and addressing that up front.
Right. No,
So if you're saying, let me guess, your couch broke because your kids threw a party and you need a new couch. We know what you're feeling. We've got couches that can withstand the next teenage assault.
Right. Now this gets down to one of the key things that I think is important to B2B businesses, and that is you have one message, one system, one thing that you do, right? So
Yep.
you need to have that kind of system in place, but then the other side of it is you have to be able to segment it depending on who you work with. I'll give you an example. I work with a company that does, there's one company I work with that just does medical supplies. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They have one customer, and the one customer only, and it is large hospital. Well, they have two. They have large hospital chains, and then they have medical or office groups. Okay. They're going to buy in bulk. They're going to buy, whatever pads they need, or, tubing, or whatever that disposable item is. Right. So they can actually target those people pretty uniquely. They could say, if you run a hospital, we understand your problem. We deliver a better product that lasts longer, costs less, yada, 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 make your nurses happier, keep them employed. They can go down that road and they understand it very well. Another customer I work with has multiple different, they sell the same product, okay, which is something that will scan or print barcodes, okay, and even software to do it. But now they work in different industries. They work in the warehousing industry. They work in the medical industry. They work in the transportation industry. So what they need to do is take that message and find a way to segment it to each one of their needs. So that's where segmenting the information, taking that and doing an exercise for each one of them is important. Expand on what I just said.
Well, let's use the second one for example. It's a good example. The commonality between all of those customers is what's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
They all have a need to scan barcodes. Why? Like that's the question we're answering.
Collect data. It's chain of custody. It's all the same stuff.
So why would any of that be different through any of the industries you mentioned? It solves their same challenge of tracking and accounting for and being accountable for every touch point in the process.
It does, but the things that are happening, there's a very different there's a different perception when you're dealing in a hospital and scanning somebody's barcode. You're dealing with a patient and records going through a whole bunch of other doctors and the system that's going on. When it comes to a package going through a warehouse, from picking it to getting it out the door, you're still doing the same thing. You have different people involved in it, but the mentality behind working with people in a warehouse versus doctors is going to be different. So you have to deal with the people that are actually engaging in the system.
But I don't see any. You're talking about the industry that the industries.
That's what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
But the insight is still the same. The insight is still the same, Brian. They have data that they need to track real time on a regular basis and aggregate it so they can act against it.
Right.
Whether it's a package being delivered to California from Ohio, or it's tracing the process of the progress of patients and where they're at. That chain of custody idea exists no matter what. True. Now, what you're selling is the management and real-time application of data. You're not selling a hospital tool, a medical tool, and a transportation tool, and a logistics tool. You're selling something that only does one thing. So how you relate it is, here's the importance of managing that data day to day, and here are industries where that's the most important.
Right, and that is very key, I think. But the challenge again gets back to what we were talking about before with the plumbers. Which audience do they want to talk to? You know, it's really getting that specifics down to who are we talking to? You know what I mean? Who's going to buy that? Is it the IT department? Is it the warehouse manager? And that's where each industry has different people that you're having that conversation with. That's where I'm getting to.
But each industry has a CFO and a COO. And what they're thinking about is efficiency. And what they're thinking about is, how do we move, or a CTO, how do we move data more effectively? But let's apply this to a business that's like a hospital. That's fine. There are so many different data points that have to move around a hospital that aren't specific to just an ailing patient.
Right. Absolutely.
Everything is in motion all the time. And if it was a quick scan to know where things stand, perfect solution. If it's a quick barcode scan of a package and you know everywhere that it's been and all of that stuff, that is what's of value to them, not that it's the package distribution industry or the medical industry. They have the same challenge regardless of what industry they're in.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's what I start with. And then I say, here's how it applies to the medical industry.
Right. But what I'm talking about with segmenting is making sure that when you're telling that message. Okay, so let's go through that process again. So number one is, what industry are you in? And then you start to hone that message on the second floor, right? So it's like, what is the challenge in your specific industry? And then the second level is what again? What's it going through that 4 floors that you talked about?
The first floor is that connection, what you do, right? So if it's in this situation, it's about turning all of your data into real-time assets.
Right. Okay. So then the second floor would be
businesses, whether it's the medical industry, the shipping industry, et cetera, have the same problem, chain of custody. They need to know where something is at all times and when it's going to get to where it is, because it's all part of that experience for the end user.
Right.
Hospitals deal with this. They have so many patients that are coming in and all of this data moving back and forth.
And that gets to the segmenting side of things. So we're on that second floor, if we can identify.
No, that's examples of how your technology helps.
Gotcha.
That's not segmenting. All that is getting them aligned with the types of industries that deal with a lot of data.
Gotcha. Okay.
And a lot
of
tracking.
Sense.
I'm sorry, a lot of tracking.
Right. Exactly. Capture, tracking, and reporting. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, businesses that deal with a lot of tracking is what you throw out as examples. And then the third floor, your solution, is what you provide to them to help it.
Right. And then the fourth floor would be what?
How you work with what is your process? It's a 3-step process. We identify your needs, we build the platform, and we manage it for you, whatever that is. And then what are the services like? It could be, for this many employees, it's this much a month. For this many employees, it's this much a month. And then the 6th floor being benefits. What you get out of it is real-time intelligence, unwavering chain of custody, so nobody drops the ball, like what those 3 things are. Here are businesses we've done this for. Then you give them a case study of a hospital, a case study of a transportation company.
Right.
But you could add a slide in there that's specific to the medical business. The bottom line is, no matter what business they're in, you're solving the same problem. It's just in a different environment.
Right. Totally makes sense. And I love that. So I'm going to say a shout out to Chris, who joined us. If you're still here, hey, dude, if you have any questions, let us know. And Jeff, the Dutchman woodshop guy, and he shows up a lot of times on these. So we got about 10 minutes.
The Dutchman woodshop guy?
Yeah, he does woodshop. He does woodworking. Like last year, my wife, for Christmas, we had a birdhouse. I had him rebuild the birdhouse. So that was her Christmas gift, and she loved it.
Awesome.
And it lasted all year, and it looked better, and it opened because it was falling apart. I mean, basically we had it for like 15 years and the wood all rotted. He rebuilt the entire thing, and it's fabulous. It's been working fabulous. So anyways, just saying shout out to those guys.
But I think just wrapping up that thought real quick, Brian, at the end of the day, audience segmentation is simply, let me show you how this applies to your business.
Right.
It's not 3 separate ways to talk to them.
No, and I thoroughly understand that, and I love the way, so basically what we're doing is we're making that pyramid go up, but then there's also this a little bit of this segment, and basically is slicing that up a smidge. So the more you can drill down, the more relevant the message comes. So let me go back to, let me go find that one thing that I had and pull that back up, and it is, I think, this one here. There it is. Yep. Okay. So let me share the screen. So the key thing that I want to get across on this is that when I talk about the race, and I had this conversation with Mark S.A. Smith, he came up with the race acronym. What I did is I broke it down to sales and marketing. And marketing, basically, number one, if you can create relevance, this is where we take it to the next level. I love your 4 steps. What I'm talking about is, with the messages that you're getting out there, if you can create relevance to somebody, then they're going to pay attention to what you're doing. And if you create awareness, by being relevant. In other words, you're in the medical, if you're a plumber, the relevance is, hey, small businesses have this problem, and then the awareness is, here's, we fix problems for small business. Consistency is being out there all the time. You're not going to get somebody to respond to anything with just one touch. And the last thing you want to do is try to create some engagement, and engagement is walk on the elevator, hit the button, and turn around, look at the guy and say, what do you do? It's like, how you doing? And if that conversation starts, that's cool. But relevance is if somebody sees you go up and down that elevator all the time. Awareness is that, I've got my logo on my shirt. It's like, why do you have your logo on your shirt, right? Consistency is you're using the same elevator every single time, with the chance that you might find that person. And the engagement is they've seen you enough. Now, all of a sudden, they're going to start up a conversation with you because you're familiar to them, right?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. And the way I see it is, what you have on the marketing side is exactly how a business is thinking about it internally.
Right.
So in that image, you basically translate, you use the term sales, but you're doing that audience translation.
Right.
Relationship and authenticity is really the first 2 floors of my elevator, first 3
Right.
floors of my elevator. Commitment is that process and bringing them through what they'll experience and how the services tie in and those benefits. And execution is that ability to validate it and get to that call to action.
Right.
So
exactly.
It's that translation to the outside world that you're demonstrating here.
And that's why I wanted to show it. And so one of the key things I wanted to say is that marketing is a process that leads to what you're doing. So in other words, relevance leads to relationships. Okay. You wouldn't have a relationship if there wasn't any relevance between the two of you. You've got a roller skate. I've got a brand new key, right? Awareness leads to authenticity. You cannot have an authentic conversation with somebody unless they're aware of a reason why they would want to do that, right? And then consistency drives that commitment. If you are doing something on a regular basis, that consistency gets in somebody's mind. Like we said way back at the beginning with the toilet paper or the furnace filter of the month club, that consistency leads to commitment, meaning that they know you're going to drop something off. They can recommend you to somebody and feel like you are going to live up to your expectations, right?
I would argue that that's authenticity leading into commitment.
Well, that's but it's kind of the consistency gets them to take, to say that authenticity. I mean, all of that stuff works together. And then the engagement, if they're engaging with you, right, then you get to the point where you can start a relationship, get to authenticity, get a commitment, and get the execution. So all of those things kind of work in concert with each other. And that's really the point of what you're talking about, I think. Does that match up with your...
100%. You are pointing out the importance of that translation from brand to audience, from marketing to sales, however you want to piece it together. But that's what you're pointing out, is that translation. Like, what does that for, that relationship versus, I can't even remember the first one in race.
Well, it's relevance. Are you talking about relevance?
Relevance to relationship is that translation that I'm talking about. And that's what businesses need to go through. Is you could have your internal idea of relevance and awareness, but what's the outside interpretation of that is very different a lot of times.
Right, exactly. No, perfectly makes sense.
You may think your relevance is a feature of your product, but that's not what's going to base the relationship. That's not what's going to start the relationship. Think of it that way.
I agree 100%. Okay, so we got about 5 minutes left, not even. And
All right.
if anybody has any questions, you can ask them. We'll try to get to them. But in the bottom line with this is, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that as we kind of wrap things up?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is to go on LinkedIn and look up Mike Verret, Verret, and connect with me there. That's where I share a lot of content and do a lot of communication. And you can also check out my website. It's Verret and AND, because they wouldn't let me use the ampersand. So it's Verret and Associates.com.
Cool. All right. So at this point, I think, to kind of summarize everything that we talked about is that your audience versus your brand blueprint is what we're really talking about, is understanding the audience versus the brand. Most people lead with, our mission, vision statement, but with audience, it's really about developing what are the relational aspects that you need to think about, and how do you go through that elevator speech. I love that 4-floor scenario. So repeat that one more time. The first floor is
there's 8 floors to the elevator. The first floor is connection, and get them to say, tell me more.
Right.
The second floor is who you help and what they're going through, so you can align with who the audience is. The third floor is your solution, a simple way to state what you do. You add the sizzle to their, or you create the bacon smell around their content.
Right.
The fourth floor is the process, and that's very important to set up your services, is you show them a full view of what they're going to experience. Fifth floor, you introduce your services. Sixth is benefits. Seventh is validation, case studies, testimonials. And eighth is get in touch. What do you want them to do next?
Right.
If you invert that, if you turn it around, that's the way human beings would ask questions to gather information.
Awesome. Yeah, it's such a great thing. It's great the way you laid it out. So as usual, Mike, you've underpromised and over-delivered. And I love the way this conversation kind of evolved from the beginning.
You and I seem to have a habit of doing that, Brian.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point. That's why I love doing these bacon and coffees, because this now sits out. If you like this, I mean, share it. Bottom line is go to LI for sales. I'll put up my my banners. I didn't make one for you. I apologize about that.
That's quite all right. I'm not that high maintenance.
Yeah, but if you go to the easiest thing for me is go to Ltree, linktr.ee bacon guy, and you'll find that you can connect with me on LinkedIn and all that other stuff. But on liforsales.com is where these live, the bacon and coffees, and they're there, so you can go back and watch Mike's other ones too. And they can be shared. This is my second
cup of coffee with you.
Well, it's the second cup of coffee, but you've been on the Bacon Podcast twice, and so you got Bacon Podcast, you've got LI for Sales. So here's the bottom line: if you deliver the goods, then you end up being a repeat guest, and that's kind of the key, and that's what we're trying to accomplish, right? Is delivering goods.
I think the goods that we deliver in this conversation are as simple as this. If you're thinking internally, your audience is not going to connect with it the way you think they are. You need to be thinking about how the audience perceives what you do for them, and not what you think you need to tell them.
Absolutely. Yep. So I suggest if you're catching this midstream, go back and start at the beginning and listen, because this has definitely evolved throughout time. And this has been a power hour, man. It's been great. Mike, thanks again for joining us. And I appreciate you. I'm going to send everybody off with their little caffeine and bovine intro outro, and have a great day, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Brian.